Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. John Warrillow is the founder of the Value Builder System, a simple software for building the value of a company used by thousands of businesses worldwide. He's the author of Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You, The Automatic Customer, Creating a Subscription Business in Any Industry, and The Art of Selling Your Business, Winning Strategies and Secret Hacks for Exiting on Top. John also hosts the popular podcast Built to Sell Radio. Today, we're going to talk about how to create a business to sell, the difference between a job and a business, and who needs to be on your team. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hi, John. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Michele.
Great. I am so excited to talk to you today. When the opportunity came up for us to have this conversation, I was super excited because I already had your book Built to Sell. And then I had seen that you had a new book out. What is it? The Art of Selling Your Business.
That's right.
So I immediately ran out, and I've told on the podcast, Amazon's like my friend when they drop ship a book a day to my house. But I was able to get that one as well. And so they are just chock full of information. And so I'm excited to just dig in a little bit with you and talk about the art of selling a business, what it means to sell a business, right?
Sure.
And our listeners are interior designers and workrooms and fabricators. And so sometimes it's very service oriented. And I think, at least from my experience, John, that sometimes is hard to put a price on. I know I've been teaching a signature program for 11 years now called Pricing Without Emotion. So how we price service-based work, take the emotion out of it. What does it mean? What does it cost? What are the inputs? How do we price it? Not how we feel about it. And so really, we're talking about buying and selling without some emotion here. But it's just so hard to do when these are businesses that we started. Many of us, we're starting a business is very creative. So it's very much a piece and a part of the owner that got it started. They are building up these ideas of what could come to life with fabric and paint and elements. And so to put a price tag, not just on their work, but then to have to price out an entire business is quite the challenge. Can you just start off by talking to us a little bit maybe about what are some things to even just right off the bat think about with selling a service-based? I mean, I'm assuming we can sell a service-based business, right?
Yeah, if it's structured the right way, for sure. I mean, I've owned a few service businesses, none in the interior design space, but I've owned a graphic design studio. So I feel like I have some creative, synergies or spirit with some of your listeners. I also owned a quantitative market research business, which was a service company. That last one I went to try to sell. And at the time we worked with very large organizations, big banks, phone companies. And I was involved in doing some of the selling. And I went to see an M&A person in Toronto. This guy's name is Perry Miele. And I said, what did you think it's worth? And at the time we were, I thought a pretty good sized business. We had 5 or 6 million in revenue, 20 to 30% profit margins. So like good, service-based business profit margins. And I was sort of walking around thinking that it would be worth a multiple of my profit and my client list would be what everybody wanted, like Microsoft, Bank of America, et cetera. And Perry kind of looked at me across the room and peered over, his nose through his tortoiseshell glasses and said, like, John, it's not worth anything. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not worth anything? And he's like, it's all you. I mean, you're doing the selling, you're doing the delivery. I'm like, no, I've got 20, 30 employees. And he's like, no, if you're doing the selling and you're still supervising the work, it's worthless. I can't sell your company. And I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. It's probably 20 years ago now, but it was like the wind being taken out of my sails, right? I had thought my company would be worth something because I had a great client list and I had good profits. And what Perry taught me was that none of that really matters if the business is still dependent on you. And so I think that's the secret, or that's the challenging part of selling a service-based business, is to structure it so that it's not dependent on you anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. So now let me ask this. If it's not dependent on you, where do you fit in those years prior to sell?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's first of all, there's a philosophical change that we need to make, I think, as owners. And that is that right now in service-based businesses, I think we inject all of our creativity, all of our intelligence, our grit, and our desire into making a client project come to fruition, right? And in fact, what we actually want to do is invest that same energy into building a valuable company as opposed to serving an individual client. And I can remember when I learned this, I got the chance, I was probably, again, 15, 20 years ago, I was invited to a thing called the Birthing of Giants, which is a pretentious name, but it's about 60 entrepreneurs that gather once a year for 3 consecutive years on the MIT Executive Education campus. And I was selected for this program. I was very flattered. It was amazing. And we heard from some amazing speakers over the years. Pat Lencioni talked about, how to build a team. Jack Stack, the guy who wrote a Stake in the Outcome, about how to, do employee ownership stuff. And then this guy came in who had sold a business recently. And I almost didn't go to the session because I was sort of tired of the kind of rags to riches story. And I just didn't want to hear it. And I'm glad I did, because he came in and he said, okay, how many of you are involved in selling your service or product? And like all of us, 60 hands went up in the air, right? And we were almost proud of that we were involved in doing this selling. And he said, okay, put your hands down. You all, every single one of you, he said, have the right skills. You're selling the wrong product. You need to hire salespeople to sell your service or your product. You need to be investing those skills in marketing and selling and influencing and delivering in building a more valuable company. And so like, that's a philosophical head scratcher for a lot of owners. I bet you a lot of the people that listen to your show are parents, I'd imagine. And I imagine also that as parents, they've gone through that psychological journey where in the beginning, you're caring for your child, you do everything right for them, you feed them, you burp them, et cetera. And then as they grow older, your role as a parent sort of shifts a little bit, right? And you're all of a sudden, trying to give them guard roles in their teenage years. So, like they're kind of getting a little freedom, but by the time they're adults, you kind of want them off in the world, right? Making their own decisions, happy, independent. And then you can kind of check the box as a parent that you've done your job. I think in a funny way, the philosophical change we need to make is, instead of thinking of ourselves as the CEO of our interior design business or the founder of an interior design business or a partner in an interior design, stop thinking that way and start thinking my role here is the parent, the mother or the father of this company. And my job is not to win a new client, put on a great creative project. It's actually to get this firm to a point where it can live without me. That's the highest order job, I think, of any founder. And I think that just philosophical headspace change is an important one to make.
I think that's a really great analogy. I have always said, I have 2 sons. I'm not raising big boys. I'm raising adult men.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a difference. I even remember when it got to the point, my sons are grown and one is married. And I can remember when it got to the point where you're going through those years, John, where you're teaching and you're guiding, all those things that you talked about. And somebody made the comment, I don't remember where I read it, and it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, okay, so your adult kids are at your house and they start loading the dishwasher. Do you say something to them like, we don't put the plates in that way, we turn them this way and we turn them that way? Or do you shut up and assume that they're like a best friend at your house loading the dishwasher? You would never tell your best friend, we don't load the dishwasher. You would just be quiet, say thank you, and move on. And so it's that separation from parenting and telling him how to standing back and going, there might be more than one way to load that dishwasher, and you're an adult and I'm going to trust and I'm going to let go, and I'm not going to guide you that way. And even now we tell our boys, we're not going to call and tell you what to do or how to do it. If you have a question, call us. We'll give you some insight if you ask us to. Otherwise, we're just going to listen, and we're just going to shake our head, and we may go off and pray about it and worry about it on our own, but we're not going to say anything unless you've asked us to. And I think that's really, really hard when we are the owners. It's hard enough for parenting, but it's super hard too if we have created this business through our own thoughts and processes and hard work, and then the team that we've built to make that turn to realize, and it's first, I think, a personal realization that the company's not me. It's separate from me. We are separate beings.
Yeah. And I also think it's particularly hard for creative people where their sense of purpose, even their sense of pride and their sense of self-worth, even in some cases, is tied to their last job. Like being able to talk about that home, that beautiful 5,000 square foot home you designed, like it gives you a sense of pride that is your work, and that's people are enjoying that work. And that is a very tempting, but also very destructive thing about running a creative business. If you're getting your sense of self-worth from your last project, you're always only as good as your last project, right?
That's
Whereas
right.
if you can get that same sense of creative inspiration, the same sense of pride from your company and what your company does and how you position your company and market and train your people, et cetera, then I think you are building something of value. And here's the thing. Where we get slipped up, look, for us to build a company that can thrive without us, clearly you have to get other people doing the work, right? You can't be the one doing the interior design. That's easier said than done. The challenge, I think, where we fall down is we're too wide. We listen to clients and try to understand their needs and provide a custom solution for every client, right? And so that means one day you're doing a luxury home of 5,000 square feet, another day you're doing a condominium of 800 square feet, and it's very difficult to try to instill your expertise that allows you to do that breadth of job overnight. It's said 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. That's an old expression, right? But some things, they just take time to learn, right? And you've had the benefit of a multi-year career as an interior designer. You can't hire young people out of school and suddenly inject everything you've learned. And so what the challenge, I think, is to narrow what you do. Decide where you're going to dominate. Is that going to be ultra luxurious homes of $12 million or more? Or is it going to be student apartments on a budget? Is it going to be family homes in the country or modern homes in the city? Once you decide that, you can start to develop your own methodologies, your own process, your own point of view, which you can instill in other younger designers. And because you've narrowed from a really wide breadth of offerings into a very narrow solution, if you will, you can start training people. You can also become much more referable, right? Mm-hmm. When I think about interior design, like the only thing I'm going to recommend an interior designer is on their personal relationship. I like that individual, therefore I'm going to refer you. And therefore, if you think about it, that juicy, wonderful jet fuel for your company known as word of mouth will always be contingent on you personally, because people are just referring you. Whereas if you become the world's expert at doing interior design for $12 million homes, or the country's most specialized person in doing, eco-friendly condominiums, that makes you referable, right? It makes it easier to spread word of mouth about you that's independent of your personality and more about your specialty. And so again, there's lots that goes into building kind of a sellable company, but I think one of the most important things is the discipline to pick one thing. and dominate that one type of service. And people are listening to me as I say that. I'm sorry, Michele, for getting on my grandstand, but people are listening to me and they're saying, oh my God, I couldn't imagine anything worse. I couldn't imagine the McDonald'sification of my interior design business. It's a pejorative to think about, Ray Kroc and the fact that he developed systems and processes. And that's an anathema for who I am as a creative. Well, be that as it may, that may be where your head is at, and know that you have a job, not a business. If you take that same desire to be creative and you inject it into building a company as opposed to serving a client, you can get the same sense, I would argue, even greater sense of satisfaction, but you're building an asset as opposed to serving a client. Does that make any sense?
And absolutely. It's using your creativity with a different focus.
Yeah. What does your website look like? What are the emails that come out when people request a consultation? What is that experience like when you go for a discovery meeting? How have you mapped that out? Those are all really creative projects that you can really get behind. But the beauty is you do them once and they become your funnel for life, as opposed to having to recreate yourself and kind of spin all the plates all at once every new job you get. So I would just encourage people to not stop being creative, but just inject those skills and sort of aim them at a different project.
I'm curious let me think of what is the difference in your estimation between having a job and a business? Because you mentioned that a minute ago. How would we, and the reason, and let me tell you where I'm going to go with that next, because then I'm curious if we were to look at businesses, not just jobs, right? Where I'm just creating something for me to do for the next few years until I'm done to make a little side cash, but truly a business that outlives me. What percentage of those are created and are viable for sale versus created and not viable for sale? But I want to kind of differentiate job and business before we go there.
Yeah, great question. And I'll try to do my best. I don't know if I have statistics for you on that front, but we can.
That's all right. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I think, again, it's somewhat subjective, but I would say the difference between a job and a business is a job stops when you stop working. Right. So no matter how much you charge by the hour, you can charge $1,000 an hour, but if you stop working, the work stops effectively. And that is what I would call a job, even though the IRS would call you a business if you're sending a business grade invoice, et cetera. It's really a job, right? Whereas if your company generates money independent of your personal involvement, the time you spend in the company, that is what I would refer to as a business, and certainly a transferable business if it can truly succeed without you. And again, if we look at the statistics, and I'll try to put some framework around this, there are 30 million small businesses in the United States, 6 million of which have at least one employee. Said another way, 24 million have no employees. They are effectively jobs, right? So even though the Small Business Administration likes to talk about there are 30 million small businesses in the United States, but 24 million of them are really not what I would refer to as a transferable business. It's more of a job or freelance side hustle. So we got 6 million. Of the 6 million businesses, it's roughly, let me get the math right, it's roughly 4%. It's about 1.2 million ever get to 7 figures in revenue. So 7 figures in revenue would be $1 million of annual revenue, which in a service-based business really equates to roughly 10 employees more often than not, right? So just 4% of companies ever crest kind of 10 employees. So it's a very challenging thing to go from a job to a business. It's the biggest roadblock, I think, for many owners, in particular service-based businesses.
Yeah, I think a lot of service-based businesses created a job, which is fine. And then they get to the point where they think, and I've talked to many like this in our industry, oh my goodness, I want to sell. But then they don't really have what they need to sell, to your point, a transferable business. What they have is perhaps some assets in the company, machinery, books, items that somebody else in that same industry could purchase, but they don't have, a leadership turn. They don't have anybody else who can stand into that position. They don't have documented processes and procedures so that anybody else could even step in and replicate what they had without them there. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, their choice, honestly, is either turn off the lights and do a yard sale, or to sell the assets and then turn off the lights when they're down to that last wire, right? I mean, there's really not much else you can. It is not very easy, in my estimation, to sit down on the day that you decide you want to sell and sell if you haven't prepared in advance to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the only exception of what you described, essentially just selling your assets, your hard assets, would be if you were to effectively merge in with a larger interior design organization and accept what's called an earn out. And an earn out is where you maybe get a little bit of money up front, but then over time you get paid for your business based on the performance of your company as a division of an acquiring company. And it sounds like reasonable in theory. In practice, it's challenging because you're now a minority owner, if even just an employee in a company you don't necessarily control anymore. The acquiring organization can change the rules. There's lots of leeway. They can make it very difficult for you to hit your earnout. I'm reminded of a woman I interviewed on Built to Sell Radio named Jody Cook. I'm not sure if you heard that episode. It was maybe a couple of months ago now. She built a service-based business. They were in social media, marketing, digital marketing. If you wanted to build Instagram ads and so forth. She started off and it was just her, and she decided she wanted to build a business beyond her. So she kind of focused on one thing, and she got a whole system, productized her service. So it felt like a tangible thing. But she's a very independent woman and had no interest in an earnout, right? Like she knew from the beginning when she decided she wanted to sell, I think they had about 10 or 12 employees. She knew she did not want an earnout. And so what she did was build out standard operating procedures, right? Which are basically instructions you want your employees to follow. So you do an SOP for, how you want your emails responded to and how you want to quote jobs and how you want to, all of the things get created in these kind of standard operating procedures. And I remember I said to Jody, man, for a creative, obviously very independent person, that must have felt like just like a jail sentence to spend 3 months doing all that work to create those standard operating procedures. And she responded back saying, yeah, John, but if you had to go to jail, would you rather go to prison for 3 months or 3 years?
That's exactly right.
And her point was, I could do it now for 3 months and get it all written. And then I can get out of my business without an earnout, or I can keep it all in my head and have to suffer through an earnout. And so she did the 3 month, and she got out. She sold her business on the high end of what the multiple ranges in her industry, and she left 2 weeks after. No earnout.
That's awesome. That's the way I would want to do it.
Yeah, an amazing story. And again, in a service-based business where obviously creativity is at a premium, you usually don't exit a marketing services business or virtually any service business without some sort of earnout. But the big lesson she learned was the importance of these standard operating procedures to really help kind of make the business transferable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if somebody, let's say in her situation, in our situation, somebody's created, based on the definitions that we set up a few minutes ago, a job, and they want to turn it into something that is sellable, so transferable type business. What are some of the things that they need to do outside of operating procedures, and what type of time frame should they allow for that before we even get to the finding a broker or talking to anybody? Like, what do they need to do to get themselves ready? What do they need to be able to show to make that sellable? Yeah. It's a great question. Let me answer the steps first, and then we can talk about timeline. I think there's probably, in a service-based business, is 2 steps that you need to take from kind of transitioning from a service or job, if you will, to a transferable company. We've already talked about the first one being, picking one thing, deciding if you're going to do the 800 square foot condo or the $12 million mansion, and really figuring out what it is you were put on this planet to really do in the way of a specialization.
The second step, I think, is productizing. And productizing is where you turn what sounds like a service, like I'll bill you $100 an hour for my time, and we'll spend lots of time looking at things, and you can pick, to productizing, developing a solution which is effectively like marketed like a thing. So you'd name it. So the 5-step interior design system for $12 million mansions, as an example, you'd name each of the steps that you take in order to deliver that offering. And the way I've usually described is, imagine you pull a bottle of Tide off the shelf at Costco, right? The logo always appears the exact same way. The name always appears the same way. If you turn it around, the value proposition is always described in the same way. The steps that you take to use the product are always itemized. Even the cautions, right? Like, don't drink this stuff, is listed on the back. And so what you want to do is make that service, instead of I charge $100 an hour for my design time, to we offer the $12 million mansion escape plan or design concept or whatever. And it's got these 6 steps that we take everybody through. What that does is it makes your service look like a thing independent of you. In the absence of productizing, people are vetting you. They want to hear your referrals. They want to talk to your previous customers. And it gets to be this kludgy process where they're buying you. And as long as you're there, they're happy. But if you want to walk away, they're not. And so you need to stop selling you and your time and your experience and your portfolio and move to a thing, a productized offering. That's step 2. Step 3, if you can, finding some form of recurring revenue. And recurring revenue is like a tail to what you do. And again, interior design is difficult because you only need oftentimes a design done once or once every 10 years. You buy a new home and you want to get it what you've got to start thinking through is, how do I create some form of a tail to what I do, right? Here's the secret. Most people, when they try to transform a transactional business into a recurring one, they try to kind of figure out what all their customers would value. And that's almost always a recipe for diluting your offering and kind of coming up with this sort of half-baked, diluted sort of offering. What I think you want to do in contrast is to first segment all of your customers. So the $800,000 condo or 800 square foot condo and the ranch and the family home and the mansion, you want to look at all the reasons people buy from you and segment your customers in that way. And then ask yourself at a segment level, what recurring revenue model would these people value? I'll give you an example that is, again, outside of the interior design space, but I think it'll serve to illustrate. There's a company called H. Bloom, and they wanted to get into the business of selling flowers. Flowers is a crappy, you think interior design's tough. Try selling flowers. You have to buy flowers. The moment the farmer cuts them from the stem, they start to die, right? Typical flower store in America throws out more than half of its flowers because they're rotting in the bottom of the refrigerator, right? So you've got perishable inventory. You have to, Mother's Day and Valentine's Day is when people buy flowers, right? It's like 30-40% of all the flowers bought are around those 2 days. So you're left 363 days of the year trying to like stimulate demand. And you do that by getting some space on a retail space that costs twice as much as office space, right? So it's a really tough way to make a living. And these 2 guys, Brian Burkhart and Sanyu Panda, came around and said, we're going to get into the business of selling flowers. We're going to do it on a recurring basis. Now, instead of what most people would do is say, well, like, how are we going to come up with this subscription model for flowers, right? Well, there's, Mother's Day and Valentine's Day and graduate. They didn't do that. They said, who buys flowers? And they discovered that hotels buy flowers on a recurring basis because they want to, if you go to the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Buckhead, they want to present that really high-end image, right? So there's a fresh cut bouquet of flowers. So they didn't create a subscription for all buyers of flowers. They just did it for hotels who want to create a 4- and 5-star image. Well, they built a wonderful company. The average lifetime value of an H. Bloom subscriber is more than $4,500 compared to the average transaction in a flower store is around $50. So it totally changes the economics. So if you think about it, if you knew that you were going to get $4,500 worth of revenue from a single client, like how does that change how you market, how you sell, who does the marketing, who does the selling, how much you're willing to invest in those things. If you knew that you were going to get that kind of revenue from one customer. And so again, I would be looking from an interior design perspective and saying like, who buys interior design services? Sure, there are the wealthy people who have the $12 million mansion, but there's also probably contractors who need to bring in, designers on a regular basis. There's probably developers who buy a plot of land and do 200 homes of the same type, who probably need on a recurring basis the help of an interior designer. So I just think I'm not going to solve it right here with you now, Michele, but I think that's the question I think you need to answer is of all the people that buy my services, who needs it on some sort of recurring cadence?
I love that. It made me think about, I was in my chiropractor's office and I made a comment to them a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, those flowers are gorgeous. Where did you get the flowers? And they said that there's a local company. They pay a subscription every month. They don't know what they're going to get because they do it seasonally based on the flowers that are available, but they promise some type of a bouquet that looks, this tall and that wide that fits in this space. And they come out every month and they open the back of the van and they pull out the brand, or every couple of weeks. I think it's every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that sounds about
right.
And
they come in with a whole new bouquet. They switch it out. They take care of everything. They don't touch it. And then I've seen office complexes that did the same thing with like plants, where they would come in and water the plants and take care of the living plants. And you didn't have to do it. So they place the plant and then they come and take care of it. So just you're right, even thinking through that as a subscription, recurring. I even think of things like on even the drapery workroom side, things like for an X amount of money, we could twice a year send you updated pillows, right? Or pillow covers to change out so that you have a different look in that space. And so there's all kinds of just little things that you can do. It doesn't all have to be, I think, an informational subscription model or recurring model. And I think,
not at all. Yeah.
And I think a lot in the interior design space think that the recurring model needs to be something informational, not necessarily a product, but it could absolutely be some type of a recurring product for something that they already buy, sell, and do, and that they've monetized, right?
Yeah.
And that feeds into that whole lifetime value of the client. What are they going to pay you after the main event of the design? And then how long do they usually stay with you to do that type of, refresh in their home before it's time to come in and do it again? So I love that way of thinking. All right. So then how long do you think it would take if we were looking back at it? Because here's the other things I think we do also, and we haven't even hit on that. This is on the product side for sure, but we have to show that there's profitability. We need to be able to show that people are being paid and that we're able to make payroll. And I know that sounds kind of silly and maybe is a given in some industries, but in super creative industries, they have a high tolerance for low pay in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not going to go buy a business from somebody if the owner of that company wasn't getting paid. They may pay their employees awesome, but if that owner is not making any money and there's not any additional profit in that company, that's not going to be one unless I'm going to retool it and change it out, or they've got something else that I want technology wise or some secret sauce recipe. I'm not going to go in and buy that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's also that is a symptom of a larger problem that, giving away your time for less than your worth is a symptom of this larger problem, which is wanting to be appreciated, right? Wanting to be loved and needed and acknowledged for what you do makes people squeamish about charging for what they do, right? It's this like, love me because I'm creative doesn't necessarily work when you're trying to build a company. And again, I don't say that lightly or in meaning to be offensive. I just mean that I think we as creative people try to we derive too much of our self-worth from how much our clients like us and appreciate us.
From the accolades that we get
from the accolades and the attaboys or attagirls kind of that fill us up, right? Yeah. Whereas if you can get that same sense of self-worth from watching your company, like you would as a parent watching your child start to succeed without you, I can tell you it feels 10 times better when someone else is doing it. And you know that that's going to perpetuate without your work for years into the future. So anyway, to go back to your question, which I think was around how long, I would draw it into sort of two Well, there's three little points I would make. One, when you go to sell your business, as you know this, Michele, you've helped lots of people do this. They're going to usually look at 3 years worth of past financial statements. They're going to weight those so that your most recent year is the most heavily weighted, but they're also going to look 2 and 3 years back. So a 3-year run rate of making money is usually a starting point, right?
Right.
The old, how long does it take to build a valuable business is like, how long does it take to grow a tree, right? Like forever. It's the kind of thing that never stops, but you have to decide when you're ready to, it's grown to a point where you feel like you want to pass it on. And again, you want to make sure there's probably 3 years worth of healthy profits, ideally growing profits year over year. And then I think the process of selling, once you kind of put your company on the market, so to speak, it's probably a year. And it could be done shorter. In many cases, it can be. But when you think about the actual marketing of your business, talking to potential buyers, there's usually a 60 or 90 day kind of due diligence process where people kind of vet the books and so forth. So I would budget, a year. And again, if you haven't productized, created recurring revenue, you're probably on the back end. Once you consummate a deal, you probably got a 3-year earnout after that. So long story short, you really should be thinking about this years in advance of actually wanting to be on the beach, right? Because you're going to have to make some of these fairly kind of structural changes to make it less about you and more about a company. Then you're going to have to see those changes come to fruition in the ways of profits and be able to demonstrate that they are growing over time and then sell. And again, depending on how well you've done creating recurring revenue and so forth, you may not have to have a long earnout, but those are some of the things that, some of the kind of the timing benchmarks that I'd be thinking about.
Yeah. And that kind of fits in with what I've been working with my clients. John, explain exactly what an earnout is. So for some people, that might be a term that's brand new to them. They don't know what that means or how that works. If you could just give some context around that.
Yeah, essentially it's where you sell your business and usually get some money up front, but then there's a second payment or third in the future, which is contingent on you hitting certain goals as a division of the acquiring company. So let's say interior design company A is bought by interior design company B. They're going to say, great, we'd like you to work at your company. Don't leave, just stay, continue to run your company. And if you grow your revenue from X to Y, we'll give you another tranche of money for your company. If you fail to do that, however, there's no extra money. And so it's often used in a service business because, as David Oakley said, that, the assets go up and down the elevator every night, right? Like you want to retain the founders, the principals of the interior design firm. And therefore you don't give them a huge check at closing day and they're going to run off into the sunset. You give them a little bit of money and then you give them the bulk of their proceeds contingent on them hitting certain goals. And so for most owners selling, it's the worst possible outcome, right? Because you want to get, first of all, if you started your own business, you're probably independent minded. You don't like having a boss. You certainly don't like having your destiny controlled by someone else. And you don't want a boss from the company that you just created. Yeah. I've heard it described as kind of open heart surgery without the anesthetic. Like you sell your company and the only reason someone's going to buy your company is if they think they can make it better. Well, how do they make it better? Well, they make changes, right? And they're going to basically You've got to suffer through that. Yeah. They're going to rip up the policies, the procedures, the way you deal with clients, the way you price your jobs to make it more profitable. And that's going to feel like you're having an appendectomy without anesthetic. Yeah. So I sold a company a few years ago. And when we were going through the different process and we were talking to different buyers that had come in they were pretty much coming in saying, we're either going to compete against you or we're going to buy you. That was kind of the way that the conversation started. But all of the owners, we were all ready to sell. We had a partnership. We were ready to go. It was interesting, though, when we got down to the two main offers. One was a cash payout because they just wanted it their way. And they were willing to pay or to keep a couple of us employed to be able to have a transition, but it was mostly like 6 months. It was like seriously a transition handoff, right? The other was nothing at closing, 3-year earn out, and this is what you'll get.
Well, we were already like tapped out at that point. Like the thought of getting nothing at closing with the promise of 3 years if we went above what we were already doing when we were already like at the end, we were like, no. So we definitely took the cash option.
Yeah, even though which
it could have been a little bit smaller in the long run, but it allowed everybody to go off and now start their next thing and do their next thing. I mean, that's how I started my whole, coaching business, was because I had sold a company. I was no longer working there. So now I had the ability to go create and build something new. And I couldn't have done it. I would have been 3 years still trying to earn my way out of the company that I'd sold. And there was just no way.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean,
and it's not saying that it's a bad thing, right? So my husband works in software, and he has worked for companies that have been bought out over and over and over. And they constantly have a 2 to 3 year earnout. So you're sitting there for 2 to 3 years to be able to get paid for the final sale. And it's hard. It is really hard because it's like you said, it's almost like watching somebody come in and totally retool everything that you've done that you thought worked so well that got you to where you are. And then you have to sit and support it and rah-rah-ree and cheer right behind it when every fiber of you is wanting to go get on that beach.
Yeah. I did an interview on Built to Sell Radio with a woman named Sherry Deutschman. She sold a company called Letter Logic, which she started when she took an old door in her home and took it off the hinges and put it across 2 sawhorses to make a desk. She had no money. Right. And she started selling to hospitals to offer to outsource their billing when you're sending invoices as a hospital. And that's the kind of grassroots that she started up. Literally, old door on sawhorses, she started. She built this company up, and in a couple of years in, she'd hired a couple of employees, junior level employees, and she decided she wanted to pay them a little bonus every month based on the profitability of her company, right? Profit sharing. And in the early days, it was like $12 at like $26. Like it was very, very small potatoes, but it was the thought that counts. And every month she'd bring her employees together, and it grew and grew, and she would give them the spiel about how much they were growing. And she handed out these checks, and it became this like really important part of her culture. And she built this company up to 40 or so employees, 7 million, if I remember correctly, in revenue, when she decided to sell. And she decided to sell to a private equity group who asked her to stay on and keep some of her equity in the business, similar to an earnout. It's a different legal structure, but there's some similarities to it. And a couple of weeks after they bought the company, they were looking over her financials, and they were looking down on line, like 76 on the profit and loss statement, and said, "What is this employee variable compensation plan?" And then Sherry kind of described it, proudly. Well, this is the profit sharing plan. And, by this time her checks were, and some of these like kind of hourly workers, they were making like $300 and $400 a month. Like it was a big part of their compensation. And they said, "Well, we got to get rid of that." And she's like, no, you can't get rid of that. I mean, that's what makes our culture and the way we, No, it's too rich for a company of your size based on the metrics that we've looked at and the benchmarks, and Wall Street says, oh, and they scrapped it. And Sherry left soon after. When I interviewed her, again, there were about 40 employees when she sold. I think she said there were 7 employees still remaining in the company.
Wow.
And she had no recourse, right? Because she'd sold her company, and she was still sort of being asked to be there and watch as they
dismantled
it using what I'm sure Wall Street analysts think is a really brilliant strategy about lowering costs, but without any of this sort of cultural context of what made her company special, and
right.
And I think that same sort of thing happens in an earnout, where some of the weird idiosyncrasies you have in your company that make you who you are don't look very smart on the outside, but if they knew you and knew why you do them, they would probably make all the sense in the world.
Right.
And so again, earnouts can be challenging for sure for founders. So,
we could probably do a whole podcast on finding the right buyer and doing that matchup, I'm sure. And certainly everybody go listen to your podcast where you talk about that. People can hear a lot on Built to Sell Radio. But that example, John, really makes me think about, I know in a couple of the different sales that we've been through, just personally with my husband and I, looking to make sure that the culture of the company that we're selling to, I pounded in my clients' heads, know your why, know your mission, know your vision, know your values. We use that as kind of the litmus test, the framework for decision-making on which clients we work with, which work we take on, which employees we hire. But I think those also, it's not just for most people that have built a business out of heart and soul that they love, that truly love the work of the business, not just the raking in the cash and, or kind of separated from that. If they were to sell, they want to make certain that who they sell to has an understanding of the heart and the soul of the company and the people and the culture. I know that a couple of times in some of the buyout situations we've been involved in, the selling company took the deal that they took because of the way that their employees and their management were going to be compensated and cared for on the other side when they couldn't be there to protect them. And you can see those situations, they show up, which is the opposite of what you just described, from the way that it was structured. And so there's a lot more that goes into the sale of a company, I believe, than just how much money are you willing to pay me? Because that's one of the questions everybody says, what is my company worth?
Yeah, that's what I ask.
What is my company worth? And let's assume that it's truly a transferable business. It's really just worth what somebody's willing to pay. But you've got to look past the dollar to see what's going to happen on the other side of that sale. Yeah.
Again, know that in an earnout, you don't really have control of your own destiny. So an earnout is where you stick on for a period of time. And while you may verbally have a commitment, I've had built a radio people who say, yeah, I had an ironclad agreement. I looked in the whites of the eyes of the buyer and I knew that we had a deal on certain material facts, like, are you going to move our location? Will my employees still get their bonus? All those things, only to have that executive fired, or the company that bought their company itself acquired, and a new management team brought in that made none of the commitments and had none of the kind of moral suasion. And so again, lots can happen in the sale of a company, and any kind of handshake deal, I think, it can be eradicated fairly quickly, and for a lot of reasons beyond the control of the people that make the original agreement. So I would just make sure that you try to do some of the things we talked about today, productizing, recurring revenue, making sure it's not dependent on you, so that you can get as much of your money up front as you can. And then the kind of earnout piece is a bit more like gravy, right? Like if you hit it, great, but if you don't, you're okay. You feel satisfied with the deal. And I think that's only possible when you've made some of these shifts from making it kind of about you and a job effectively to more of a transferable company.
Okay. So a couple of last questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
When we are looking at buying and selling a business, and let's say that we are looking to sell a business that has revenues between, let's say, $1 and $5 million. Okay. Because that's what I get a fair amount of from the interior designers. I'm trying to sell this business, service-based, $1 and $5 million. Let's say it's transferable. Is that the type of business that absolutely needs to have a broker or needs to go through some type of a more legal, or is it here's another designer, or here's somebody that wants to buy what I have? Like, what is the structure of, and I'm not talking about the final structure of legally how we do it, but who are the players that they need to involve so that they can make the best buy and sell agreement and decision so that everybody feels whole when it's done?
Yeah. So look, there's a few people you want on your deal team. I think the quarterback is some sort of M&A professional or business broker. And
an M&A is
mergers and acquisitions, or a business broker. They effectively do the same thing. They sell your company. I'm a big believer in using these people. I don't think most people would sell a home without a real estate agent, likely, and selling a business is like 100 times more complex. So I just would not do it without representation. It's not what I do for a living, so I don't say that in a self-serving way, but I do believe in what they do. I think they can act like a foil for you because it's a very emotional process, and there are going to be times where you want to slam your fist on the table and say, no way. They can be the one who absorbs that energy. Equally, they know how to negotiate. They know how to avoid lots of tactics. They just earn their keep. Look, there's two kinds. We've talked about business brokers and M&A professionals. It actually hides the third kind. And I think a lot of your listeners would be better served by the third kind. And that is the person who sits in between those two individuals. So business brokers generally sell companies for less than $1 million of sales, usually $1 million of price. So think of your coffee shops and so forth. M&A professionals, mergers and acquisition professionals, usually have a minimum cutoff of around $10 million of value. The space in between the business that's generating 1 to 5 million in revenue is best served by what's called a quality Main Street business broker. And that is a sort of a quote unquote higher end business broker who is slightly more sophisticated than the average broker, understands the kind of concept of a strategic acquirer, and can really represent what you've created in a unique way. So you think you're looking for somebody who's done deals that are sort of similar in size to your company, as opposed to just selling coffee shops or just selling like high-tech companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. You want someone, what we refer to as a quality Main Street business broker. I think that's probably the best person to look for.
Okay, great. And this also, I think, is a good time to just remind everybody, it's always great to have a good relationship with your own attorney, to have a good relationship with your own accountant, to make sure that your bookkeeping is up to date, look at your other board of directors, if you will, those other people that are supporting your firm, because they're all going to be called in at some point to provide something. And you want to make sure that you are up to date, things have been taken care of, and that you have those relationships built. Because I think it's a lot harder at that moment to run out and go find somebody to go look at everything versus the accountant who's been with you these last 3 years when you've been building, who knows and can pull the information quickly and knows how it's structured and can explain how your finances are structured.
Yeah. Let me give a plug for your work, because I think even like all the work leading up to an actual transaction, I think you play an incredibly important role as a business coach. Because here's the thing, as a CEO, as a founder, as an owner, operator of a business, you don't have a boss. And that's a great thing. And it also can make you accountable to nobody. And I think all this stuff we're talking about is building value, is what Stephen Covey talked about, being the non-urgent yet strategically important, right? And what we all are susceptible to doing is focusing on the shiny ball, right? The thing that's like the client who's angry, and the project that needs a quote, and all the new stuff, right? And the stuff that sort of goes to the back burner are the really strategic projects that are never urgent. And trust me, building a valuable company will never be urgent, but it will be important. And I think having someone like you to hold people accountable, to say, hold on a second, we met last month and you said you were going to do these 3 things. Why haven't you done it? Were they important? Let's go revisit the why, et cetera. So I think you, like someone like you as an independent foil to hold people accountable is really important. Once you get into the transaction itself, like the actual selling process, then I think you need a business broker. The other person you referenced, that I think is critical, is an attorney, but there's a special kind of lawyer that you want, and that is a corporate finance attorney, someone who sells companies. It probably is not the same lawyer who incorporated your company. And that's a big trap. Is a lot of owners go back to the same kind of family lawyer who did the original incorporation and said, can you help me sell this company? And they can do it, but it's like having a GP do a brain surgery. That's not their specialization. You want somebody who specializes in corporate finance, and that's a different kind of lawyer.
Yes, it is. I've worked with another client of mine, and she's going through that process. And we've worked together for a couple of years, getting the business ready so that she could step into that, right? For the things that we knew needed to be done. And I'm telling you, those are some smart people. Like, yeah. I mean, the numbers and the way that they're watching and structuring and asking and looking for scenarios that in the day-to-day, if we've never gone through that process, we wouldn't have thought about it, or we wouldn't have thought about it with that business type, or the structure of the sale, and who's staying and who's going and what are they doing, and can the business afford to pay for multiple people, and just all of it. And then you got the whole financing piece of it in some cases, and there's just so much to dig into. But I have really just loved this conversation. I could keep you on for 6 more hours and pick your brain about it. But I do want to remind everybody, do you have, are these the 2 books you have? Do you have any more books that I don't have that I need to know about and I need to go get at Amazon?
Yeah, it's a trilogy, actually. You're missing one. So Built to Sell was the first.
Okay.
How do you build a sellable business? The second one was called The Automatic Customer, which is about recurring revenue and how do you create recurring revenue? Yeah.
See, you just hit my Amazon.
Oh, that's funny.
Wish list now.
Yeah. And the third one, The Art of Selling Your Business, is the latest. So together we're trying to, it's a trilogy, if you will.
Absolutely. Oh, perfect.
I haven't sold quite as many as J.K. Rowling, but we're doing our best.
All right. That's good. And then tell everybody a little bit about your podcast and kind of what you cover and talk about on there, because it's really fascinating to listen to.
Yeah. Built to Sell Radio. It's we interview a different entrepreneur every week and ask them about their exit. And the idea is to help you punch above your weight class when you go to negotiate the sale of your company. So we get into the tips and tricks and hacks and mistakes to avoid when selling your company.
Awesome. And John, if our listeners want to know more about you and your company, what is the website? Where do they go? Check it out.
Yeah, I would, we've actually put together a page for your listeners. It's called builttosell.com/profit. And if you go there, there is a worksheet on the 9 subscription models. So you can think about how your interior design company might convert itself into a subscription model. We've got the 8 key drivers of company value video series. And there's actually a Art of Selling Your Business workbook that is an accompaniment to the actual physical book. But the digital assets are all free. So it's just builttosell.com/profit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today and your insight. And I'll just have to have you come back. I've got to go get the second book. We'll have to come back and talk about that now.
That sounds great. I'd love to do it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michele.
I really love this conversation with John, and I have totally enjoyed his books. Make sure to tune into his podcast if the idea of selling your business is interesting at all. One of my greatest joys is to work with my clients to prepare them to have a business to sell, if that's what they want. From identifying what's most important, making a strategic plan to implement, and then putting themselves in a great position to take that next step. If you're interested in learning more about my Aim with Intent program, check out the masterclass on my website at scarlettthreadconsulting.com and look under the resources tab. Choose to build a profitable business because it doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.